Two Chairs No Waiting, episode number 832, Mayberry Goes Bankrupt. Two Chairs No Waiting is brought to you each week by the folks over at weaversdepartmentstore.com. Drop by over at Weavers and check out some of the great things they got over there. They've got the exclusive Colonel Harvey's Indian Elixir t-shirt with the label on there. Go and check that out. While you're there, check out the Mayberry Cruise t-shirt. It's pretty cool. It's got an image. Cruise to Mayberry. It looks like a big Mayberry squad car, but it's a cruise ship. Pretty cool. Head over and check out some of the barber supplies too. We got a Two Chairs No Waiting mug and got barber soap and a lather brush. And while you're there, check out the big 1 43rd scale Mayberry squad cars over at weaversdepartmentstore.com. Two Chairs No Waiting is also brought to you by donations from listeners like you. Our executive producer of episode number 832 is Marty Davis. Hello, everybody. I'm Allan Newsome, the host of Two Chairs No Waiting, and it is great to be here with you in Mayberry. We're going to be talking about the episode Mayberry Goes Bankrupt tonight. That's exactly what we're going to be doing. So we'll cover a little bit of that. We're going to go through the trivia at the beginning, and then we'll cover the answers at the end. So okay, you guys ready for that? So go ahead and get your pencils and pieces of paper ready. Mayberry Goes Bankrupt is the 39th episode filmed, but it was aired the 36th episode, which makes it the fourth episode of the series for season 2. That's kind of unusual. That's the biggest one I believe we've had in the first and second season so far. The difference between when it was filmed versus when it was aired. Because this was aired earlier than it was filmed, right? So, it was obviously filmed before they aired it, but it was in the order. It was a lot different. Anyway, that was what that was. And Mayberry Goes Bankrupt was originally aired on October the 23rd, 1961. It was written by Jack Ellenson and Charles Stewart and was directed by Bob Sweeney. All right, so let me give you a little bit of the plot. This was Andy's teaching love thy neighbor type episode in this particular one. He's forced to evict. I shouldn't tell you yet because the trivia might tell you. Evict somebody from his home. Only to later discover that he can't. There's a reason not to do it. I don't want to give this stuff away before the trivia. So let's just jump into the trivia right now. So if you guys are ready for the trivia, pull out your pencil and your piece of paper. And let's get our trivia ready to go. So let's go for our trivia. Here we go. Question number 1 for Mayberry Goes Bankrupt trivia. Now, these are all coming from the MeTV quiz. This is what we're using because, I'm lazy and I was able to find these, and I think they're pretty good quizzes. But it's MeTV does a daily quiz. Now, this is from February of 2024, by the way. So if you saw it way back then, maybe you'll remember. But we're going to go through the questions now, and then we'll go over the answers later. So question number 1. The Mayberry resident who is delinquent in his taxes is named Frank what? Frank what? Is it Myers, Milburn, or Millard? Okay, write down your answer. I'm going to go through them really quick. Question number 2. What does Andy say is one part of sheriffing that he can do without? Is it being shot at, taxation, or evictions? What could he do without? Question number 3. Who has the idea that Frank should come live with the Taylors? Who has that idea? Was it Aunt Bee, Andy, or Opie? Who thought of that? Question number 4. Frank has in his box of valuables a medallion depicting what? Was it the 1906 World Fair? Was it the RMS Titanic? Or is it the Battle of Gallipoli? I'm sure I didn't say that right. Which is it? He has a medallion for. Number 5. In addition, what skyline is carved into a big old spoon that Frank has in his box? Was it the New York City skyline, Milwaukee, or Chicago skyline? Which one was it? Question number 6. He's also got a napkin ring made out of what? ivory, a whalebone, or marble? Write down your answers. We'll get over them. We'll come back to them at the end of the episode. Again, these are from MeTV, and I want to thank them for using that. We'll have a link to that in the show notes in case you want to go and play it yourself. Number 7, what is the interest on the bond that they find? What's the interest rate? Was it 8.5%? Was it 9 or 10.5%? What was the interest rate? Number 8, Frank has a portrait that shows his ancestor shaking the hands with Ulysses S. Grant, Nathan Bedford Forrest, or Robert E. Lee. Okay. Number 9, Mayberry. This is a quote. Fill in the quote. Mayberry, we thought this was blank. Did they think it was Springfield, Mayfield, or Elm City? And our final question, Frank has a letter signed by which president? Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, or Jefferson Davis? All right, so those are our questions for this week. And so I want you to go in and hope you were able to write those down. We'll go over them at the end of the episode after we've gone through all the details of the episode. So let me go back to the kind of plot details here. I guess we'll just go through it. I want to give you a summary up front. We'll just go through the whole thing. So let's get this thing started. So the episode starts off at the Mayberry Mayberry mayor's office. It starts off with them having a city council meeting, and there's some arguments going on at the beginning. And they're basically saying, Andy, you've got to go ahead and serve this, because Frank Myers, that was an answer to one of our trivia, he's delinquent in his taxes. We got to go in there, and he's delinquent, I think, in his mortgage as well. So he's delinquent in a lot of things. And it sounds like he's 8 months behind. And they're just determined that, we've got to go ahead and serve him his eviction notice, because his house is just an eyesore. And when people see it, they're going to just drive on through Mayberry if they see that. And Andy's like, well, I just, is there not any way we could just help him out in some way? And the council members are pretty adamant, and so is the mayor, that we've got to go ahead and get this done because it's such an eyesore. So they tell Andy, take this and go and tell Frank that he's got to go. And Andy does say that this is one part of sheriffing that he doesn't like, which is eviction notices. That was another trivia question answer for you. So he leaves the mayor's office and heads over to Frank's house. And as he drives up, you can see all the stuff, the junk just piled up all over the front yard and the drive area. There are chickens running around, a goat, and Andy starts to walk into the house, and as he reaches to get the fence post to open the fence, the entire fence door just comes off in his hands, and he just leans it against the picket fence. And Frank can hear him, so he asks him, hey, who is it? And he says, it's Sheriff Andy Taylor. So he invites him into the house. Very nice man, a very nice man. He offers Andy to sit down on the couch, but there's a chicken on the couch, if you'll remember. And he has to shoo Henrietta, I believe was her name. He had to shoo her off the couch so Andy would have a place to sit down. But before Andy sits down, he picks up a remaining feather from the chicken and kind of drops it in the floor. And so he begins to talk to Frank Myers, and they're talking about why he's there, and he's like, oh, I forgot about this. I kind of forgot about it. You think times are just bad, Andy, because he's not making any money. His business is not good. And Andy says, well, have you ever thought about doing a different business? He said, well, making berries for ladies' hats and just not paying you very well. He says, well, but the way fashion changes for women, this could all turn around, and I'll have the market cornered because I've got a big supply. So he goes over into the closet and pulls out a shoebox full of all kinds of different berries, strawberries, blackberries, mulberries. He's got all kinds of berries in there. And Andy says, well, I will admit that, if things do turn, you'd have it, but you need the money right now. And he basically presents him the eviction notice, and he apologizes for it, and Frank, being the nice man that he is, says, well, Andy, you're just doing your job. This is, I'm glad it was you that came by. It made it a little easier. And Andy puts his hand on him and nods and walks away. And the next scene we see is Andy and Aunt Bee and Opie sitting on the front porch. Opie's playing with all kinds of little toys. I don't know what they are. Like, I tried to look. They're like Cowboy and Indian or dinosaurs or something like that he's playing with. I didn't pay close attention, but Andy's talking to Aunt Bee as he plays the guitar, and she's sitting there knitting or something similar to knitting. A knitting expert would have to tell me what she's doing. But so basically they're talking about how sad it is that he's getting evicted, and Opie says, well, where's he going to go? He says, well, somebody will have to take him in. And they said, oh, why not us? And then he says, well, we can't do that. And Opie's like, why not? If you're the one that told him he had to leave, why don't you let him come and stay here? And Andy looks to Aunt Bee, and Aunt Bee's like, well, you just don't do stuff like that, Opie. And Opie's like, why not? You know, we're the ones that he's being kicked out of his house. Why not? He's a friend. Well, yeah, that is what the room's for, is friends and family. Well, he is a friend. He's always real nice to me. And Andy looks to Aunt Bee to try to help, and it's not helping, because both of them kind of realize, why aren't we offering to help him? Opie innocently is making them feel pretty uncomfortable at this point. And they're both trying to make up excuses as why Frank couldn't come live there. And at some point they look to each other and go, well, I guess, what do you think, Aunt Bee? And Aunt Bee says, well, if it's all right with you, I think it's all right. So Andy says, well, I'll go over in the morning. Opie, you're a great kid, or something like that. So Andy goes the next day. You see him bringing Frank into the house, bringing in his suitcase, and he's got his valuables with him and all kinds of stuff, because he's going to be staying with him for a little while. And he sits down on the couch and begins to, Opie asks him what's in the lockbox, and he says, well, these are my valuables. But Andy says, well, maybe there's something in there you could sell that would help pay your bills. And he said, oh no, I wouldn't want to do that. I'm saving this for an emergency. And he said, well, I think getting kicked out of your house might be an emergency. And Frank's like, oh, well, you got a point there. So they open it up, start looking through the things that are in there. First thing Andy finds is a medallion from the 1906 World's Fair in St. Louis. And it's pure bronze, 100% bronze. And Andy's like, oh, I don't know. Yeah. So then Opie says, what's this? And it's a spoon. It's very intricately carved. And Frank tells that if you look at that right there, that is the skyline of Milwaukee, carved right into that. He said he got it from his mother or grandmother, I can't remember, but he got it from family. It's handed down. And Andy's like, what else you got in there? And he pulls out a napkin ring, and he said, that there is pure, that is whalebone. It's whalebone. And Andy's still like, Yeah, so he starts talking to him a little bit about it, and he says, so what do you think I can get for some of this stuff? And he says, well, and Frank looks at him and says, it ain't worth a tiddly-boo. And Andy's, yep, you're right. So Aunt Bee's bringing out something for him to drink, and Andy says, well, what's this right here? And he says, oh, that right there is special. That's a bond from the city of Mayberry, from 1861. And Andy says, let me look at that there. $100. Because Frank says, you think I could cash that in? I figured it was too late. It's been too long. Andy says, well, it doesn't have an expiration date. So, yeah, I think you could cash it in. He said, I could get my $100. Andy starts thinking about it. Says, wait a minute. This says $100 that's been compounded at 8.15% or 8.5%, 8.5% per year for 100 years. So Andy immediately picks up the phone and calls the council members. And so all the other council members are gathered in the mayor's office, and they don't know why they've been called there. But Andy comes walking in with Frank, along with Mr. Harlan from over at the bank, who is the town treasurer. And their mayor's complaining, why is Frank here? We've already voted on this. It's already too late. We don't need to talk about this. And Mr. Harlan says, I think we're going to have to talk about this because he's got this $100 thing that's 100 years old. And it turns out, Andy tells, that the bill for this is, let's see, what does it turn out to be? $349,119.27 is what the value of this bond would be after 100 years on $100 at 8.5% interest. So now we see the problem, and Frank's like, well, I'll take it in cash. Well, they don't have that much money in Mayberry. So the next thing you see is all of them sitting around Frank's house, lighting a cigar for him and, just buttering him up as much as they can to try to get him to not try to cash this bond, because they just don't have the money to do it. It could bankrupt the whole town. Thus the name of the episode, right? So he's willing to, pay off all of his debts as soon as he cashes in his bond. And they're just like, we'll forgive all your stuff. You don't have to do that. No, as long as I cash in my bond, I think it'll all be good. So we see Andy later at the mayor's office, and they're again trying to talk to Andy. So he won't listen to any of us, Andy. You're the only one that might be able to get him to agree to something smaller, some kind of a smaller payment. And so they offer to pay him $25 a month on his bond. And Andy says, $25 a month on a $250,000 bill. How many years would that be? I have no idea. But they only have about $10,000 in the bank at Mayberry. They got somewhere around $10,000. So they can't pay it. So they're trying to get Andy to go and see if he can get him to agree. So Andy goes over and starts, he didn't want to do it, but he goes back to Frank's house and he starts talking to him about it. And Frank's, obviously excited about the money that might be coming. So he's looking through a Sears and Roebuck catalog or something similar to that, a mail order catalog, to things he might buy, like an air conditioner and things like that for his place. And he says, Frank, you're just not going to be able to buy that. He said, as soon as I get my bond, I will. And he said, the city can't pay that. We don't have the money. So he says, you're not going to pay it? He said, I was just really hoping I could make the house nicer so it wouldn't be an eyesore for everybody that came to Mayberry and the city. It wouldn't just be an eyesore. And Andy says, well, maybe there's something we can do about that. So the next scene you see is all those men, all those councilmen painting and cutting wood and mowing the grass and everything to fix up Frank's house for him, because they're going to make it not an eyesore. It's going to be the beauty spot of Mayberry. And we see Frank coming over after they've all been working on it for I don't know how long, because it looks a lot better. The house does. It's been painted. The fences have been repaired. Everything looks great. And they even got a mailbox with his name on it, and it opens and closes. He's excited about the mailbox. And they start getting ready to clean up after he's thanked them all, and they've thanked him. And of course the mayor said he's complaining because the mayor had painted 2 windows and Harlan only painted 1, and Andy says, well, Mayor, that's just natural because you have always been known as someone who lays it on thick. And at first the mayor's like, what? And then they move right along. And they're going to clean up all their brushes and stuff. And Frank says, hey, could I use some of the paint, if it's not all gone, to paint the frame on a picture of my great-great-grandfather shaking hands with Robert E. Lee. And that's when Mr. Harlan realizes that, oh, wait a minute. How stupid we were. If this was a bond from that time period, it was bought with Confederate money, which means it had to be paid back in Confederate money, which means it's worthless. So now they all start jumping on him. Hey, we're going to evict you just like we said we were. And, you're in the same position. And Andy says, now, wait a minute. He's not in the same position. You guys have just done something really nice for a fellow citizen. And now you're jumping right back on him. So, Mayor, would you really want to evict this man who lives in this garden spot and then it could just go downhill? And then, Mr. Harlan, wouldn't you loan money to somebody who has such a nice house that when people come through, they'll see what a great place Mayberry is? And about that time, a car pulls up. And a man and a woman sitting in the car, they say, excuse me, is there a hotel in this charming little town? And Andy says, well, yeah, about 6 blocks up the road here. And he says, oh, by the way, what caused you to stop here? Was it this fine looking house here? Never mind. Doesn't even matter. We just want to thank you and welcome to Mayberry. And they said, Mayberry? We thought this was Elm City. And they drive off. And that's how the scene ends. And we show up next back in the mayor's office, and Frank comes in the epilogue with Andy, and Andy's talking about, wow, you just don't know how important Frank is. He has a letter from the president, and he's so humble. Frank, get the letter out. And so Andy begins to read the letter and thank him. Hey, the mayor's or the president. I'm sorry I can't drop by. Things are really busy right now. I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you so much. I will drop by as soon as I'm able. And he goes into that. And the mayor's just raptured by this because the president is writing this letter. And then Andy says, signed Jefferson Davis. So it was the president of the Confederacy, which now the mayor has this blank look on his face, and Andy and Frank leave, and the mayor's still just got this a blank look on his face, and we fade to black. So that's it. There we go, guys. That is the entire episode of Mayberry Goes Bankrupt, and that's what happens in the episode. Great scenes, great show. I hope you enjoyed all of that. So now we're going to head over and go into the odd facts known by few. We'll do that. Let's see. Odd facts known by few. Here we go. Where did I put that? Right here. So Andy Clyde is the actor who plays Frank. So Frank Myers is the actor's name is Andy Clyde, but the character's name was Frank Myers. So Frank Myers was actually the Andy Griffith Show production manager's name. You got to think that they used that name on purpose, right? They used the name of the production manager for this character. So that's Andy Clyde, played Frank Myers. So, and you'll see it at the end of the credits of episodes. If you just watch the episodes in the end credits, they're named after the production manager. That's what he's named. So when Frank is showing off his valuables to Opie, there in the house, Andy picks it up, I guess, first, the coin. So the coin he picks up, he's showing them those. He talks about he got it from the St. Louis World's Fair of 1906. Well, there's a problem with that. The St. Louis World's Fair was in 1904. So there's your little trivia, a little bit of information there. That's a error in the show. So in the show it says that. Of course, we already knew that according to the machines over there at the bank, the value of his bond in 1961 for 100 years would have been $349,119.27. That is a correct number. If you calculate it out, it's correct. Now, I just wanted to tell you that in today's dollars, as of March 30th, 2025, that's when I'm recording this, or that's the 31st really, but yesterday is when I calculated this. It would have been $3,685,351.17. That's how much 1961 dollars would be worth today. Wow. Inflation is real, people. So $49,000 back in 61 would be worth 3.6 or almost 3.7 million now. Ouch. Doggone it. Whew, millionaires are not what they used to be, are they? Oh my goodness. Let's see. In the final scene before the epilogue, the couple that comes up at the end and ask about Elm City, they, let's see, I'm trying to find the actual picture here of them, but they come up there at the end, and they approach the team repairing the house and ask, is there a hometown or a hotel in this charming town? Andy says the hotel is 6 blocks up for the road. And he says, welcome to Mayberry. The man, the driver, said, Mayberry, we thought this was Elm City. Well, Elm City is an actual town in the northeast part of North Carolina. And the distance from Elm City to Mount Airy, North Carolina, Andy's hometown and kind of the basis for Mayberry, it's basically 190 miles away. It's 189 miles between those two. So I don't know how they could have possibly. They're way off track. Their maps are not good if they think Mayberry is Elm City. So just so you know, that is a fur piece from there. And also, I should mention that the lady in the car is actually Nice Dress Nellie, is who we always used to call her. She's Marvel Lawrence is who plays the lady. That's her. You'll see her in that car. So there you go. Let's see. In the epilogue, Andy brings a well-dressed Frank Myers into the mayor's office, stating that he has a letter from the President of the United States responding to Mr. Myers' invitation for the president to come to Mayberry. Well, Mayor Pike obviously assumes it's John F. Kennedy at that point, because in 61. In the letter, the president states, this is what he actually says, current critical events have kept me close to my office, end quote. As the letter closes, it's revealed that the president in the reference document was Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederate States of America. And the current critical events was the Civil War, at the time. It was assumed that the letter to Frank's relative was also the same one that Frank had gotten the bond from earlier. So that's what we assume. In the episode, it's got a kind of ambiguous ending. And it's really unknown whether the bond was purchased before or after May 20th, 1961. In May 20th, 1861 was the day North Carolina seceded from the Union. If the bond was purchased after North Carolina seceded, and it could have been in Confederate dollars, of course, but it would be worthless. But we don't know that's what happened, actually. It could only be paid for dollars, is what it says. It doesn't give you what kind of dollars it was. So you don't know whether they were U.S. dollars or Confederate States dollars. Furthermore, if it was bought before North Carolina seceded, and the town's council could still owe Frank Myers the interest on the bond if it was before that, right? Likewise, since 2 experts had calculated the interest on the bond, you'd think they'd have noticed that it was issued either before or after the Civil War broke out. Since, as noted above, a Confederate war bond is worthless. In real life situation, the ending would be most likely that Mayberry still owes Frank the interest on the bond, minus, of course, taxes that Frank owed. Right. So we don't ever really know. Frank could have really still been owed that money. Depends on when it was purchased. Let's see. So another thing, that letter that Frank had at the end of the episode. So at the end of the episode, they're reading the letter to the mayor. That letter from Jefferson Davis, which they had, and it was kind of a joke on the mayor that Andy was pulling. However, such letters from Davis are very rare, and sell today for tens of thousands of dollars. And such an item that was put up for auction on the centennial year from Davis's inauguration, which would have been 1961, so it had been 100 years. That would likely have brought plenty of money for Frank to pay all of his debts. So even though the bond may not have been worth anything, that letter from Jefferson Davis, if it were real, if this was a real event, it would have probably been worth enough money that you could sell it at auction and make enough to pay the debts, because it had been 100 years. It was 100 years since that letter had been written, right? So it would be worth a lot of money. Dick Elliott, who's the mayor in this episode, he appears in this episode. It was from, as I'd mentioned before, is October 23rd, 1961. He passed away 2 months later on December the 22nd of that year. So this is our mayor's, one of the last episodes he was in, but he passed away just after that. Let's see. And we've got a couple of notes that are not odd facts necessarily, but notes. Let's see here. They went through, there's some notes. If you go to mayberry.info, there's a lot of information there that I think you might want to go and read, and it goes into more details about that bank note. So if you go and look at the notes there in the episode show notes, or they're not show notes, but the episode notes there on mayberry.info. So if you guys don't know about Mayberry.info, it is the Mayberry Historical Society. It's a Wikipedia type site. And if you go there, you can go over to the episode guide, and you can go to any season and pick out the episode, and you can see that particular episode. Well, there are notes on this particular episode which go into, like I said, a lot of detail about whether the bond was actually worth money or not. And it goes into when North Carolina got the independence. I kind of already covered a little bit of that, but go over there and check that out, and you'll get even more information. Guys, that is all of our odd facts and all of our notes and everything. So hopefully you've gotten some things to think about as we do. So all right, so now we got to go back and do our trivia. So let's get our trivia music going again. There we go. All right, so we're going to go through and get our answers. So pull back out your piece of paper and let's see what your answers are. We got folks in our chat rooms have been coming up with the answers to these questions, and let's see how they do. So here we go. Question number 1 was, the Mayberry resident who is delinquent in his taxes is named Frank. And the answer, of course, it's Myers. We already picked that up. Question number 2. What does Andy say is the one part of sheriffing he can do without? It was evictions, right? Yes, evictions. He didn't really like doing evictions. Number 3. Who has the idea that Frank should come live with the Taylors? It was Opie. He was completely, Aunt Bee and Andy didn't even think about that, did they? Opie was the one that thought about it. And then they were kind of like, well, no, you can't just do that. And of course it turns out, yeah, I guess you can do that. All right. Question number 4. Frank has in his box of valuables a medallion depicting what? The 1906 World's Fair. That's right. Even though the World's Fair was in 1904, it was the 1906 World's Fair. So that would be the right answer. Number 5. In addition to that, what skyline was carved into his big old spoon that Opie saw in there? What skyline? It was Milwaukee. Number 6. He also got a napkin ring out of the box. And what was it made out of? It was made out of whalebone. What was the interest rate, number 7, on the bond that they find? It was 8.5%. 8.5%. Number 8. Frank has a portrait that shows his ancestor shaking hands with Robert E. Lee. Of course, what Southerner wouldn't? Of course, a Southerner would have done that. All right, number 9. That's what Andy said in there. This is a fill in the blank. Mayberry, we thought this was They thought it was Elm City, 190 miles away. Somehow they thought that it's 190 miles now. I don't know what it was in 61 because there's, freeways and stuff now. So I'm not sure if I don't know how far it was then. They were way off. They were in western North Carolina instead of eastern, in the northeastern part. Okay, number 10, our final answer or question. Frank has a signed letter from which president? Well, you should surely know this by now. Jefferson Davis. So how did you do? Our folks over in the chat room, how did y'all do on these trivia questions? We got our main chat room, we got YouTube chat room, and we got Facebook chat room. They're all over the place on these. So how did y'all do? How did you do? Did you get 10? Did you get 10? I've been trying to do these questions at the beginning before I give away the answers. So it's an honor system because it's all just for fun. It's not like you win anything. So Rube Sloan's telling he got 4 or 9. He's like that kid that ran away. Let's see. Folks are saying they got 10. They got 100%. They got all 10. Good job in our chat room. We'd love to have you join us in our chat rooms. We're on Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern time, most every week. Check out the calendar on that page. If you go to live.2chairsnowaiting.com, you'll see a calendar that'll tell you what time the show's going to be, because every once in a while I shift it. Like the coming week, I will be shifting it because the NCAA tournament finals will be that Monday night, and it starts at 7:50, I believe, East Central Time. So for me, I need to start it early, about 30 minutes or maybe an hour. So I don't know. I will let you know. But any other week, check us out at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on live.2chairsnowaiting.com. So just so everybody is aware, let's turn down the music. Thank you to the VW Boys for the Mockingbird music that we're playing there. So I just want to address, because this episode is coming out on April 1st, 2025. There are no April 1st jokes. I didn't do anything April 1st. I done no April Fool's jokes. None. And one of the reasons, as I mentioned, if you head over to the website, Mayberry.info, there is a section on that website. If you go and search, you can do it and go to Mr. Schwamp, SCHWAMP, Mr. Schwamp. And, well, it didn't go because the ad popped up. But if you go over there, you'll go to the Mr. Schwamp page. Well, at the bottom of that page, there's a link to Patch S. Schwimmer. Patch S. Schwimmer. Well, that was a story that the Andy Griffith Show Rewind Watchers Club page put out on April Fool's Day, April 1st, 2012. So 13 years ago, they put this out and claimed that Mr. Swamp's identity had been discovered. And luckily, over the last few years, maybe the last 4 or 5, this has finally died away, because people read the article, but not all the way to the end, because it goes into great detail about how they discovered the identity of Mr. Swamp, and his name was Patch S. Schwimmer. But if you just scroll all the way to the bottom, it literally said, April Fools. April Fools. But there were reports everywhere for years that the identity for Mr. Swamp had been discovered. Patch S. Swimmer. But if you take the letters Patch S. Swimmer and rearrange them, it would spell Mr. Swamp. Jim Clark, the presiding goober emeritus of the Andy Griffith Show Realtors Club, came up with this wonderful idea, and it was funny, it's great, but it has been a thorn in the sides of all of us, including him, since 2012. But it's actually died off a good bit now. I don't want to get it started again. This is April Fool's information, so you will not be tricked. Please hopefully you listen to the whole podcast and we'll get this. There won't be a link to this in the show notes, by the way. No links. If you want to go and find it, go to mayberry.info and just search for the Mr. Swamp page, and you can read all about it. And he even went in. The whole idea was he was doing it, and if you read to the bottom, it actually said, in the words of Gomer Pyle, "What a dumb trick." But Ernest T would say, "Hee hee hee, ha ha ha." So basically, don't give the joke away, because basically they were going to give you free shipping for anybody that ordered anything from Weavers before April 15th. That was in 2012. So again, don't believe your lying eyes and read the whole thing, because it's really a good write-up. He came up with a great reason as to how he figured it out and everything. What a great job he did on this. But you'll find here the Mr. Swamp Patch S Schwimmers.
It's real.
That's, what is that, an anagram? Is that what that's called? Anyway, it's the same letters in a different order. So somebody that knows English can tell me what that is called, but it's the same letters in a different order. Jim Clark, great job on this April Fool's joke. It's been 13 years. Awesome. So like compounded interest over the last 13 years is what somebody they're saying in the chat room. Dan said in the chat room. An anagram is correct. Thank you very much, Rube Sloan, in our chat room, for making sure I said that correctly. So there you go. There's a little bit of April Fool's information, but I'm not pulling it on you. I'm trying to warn you against it. So basically, today, if you're listening to it on the day the podcast comes out, is April Fool's Day. So please remember not to believe anything you hear on the internet, just like every other day of the year. It's not different. Confirm, and always confirm. Don't just believe it. Well, folks, that is all I've got for you tonight. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. I hope you enjoyed just going back through the episode. Maybe you got some odd facts that you didn't know about. Maybe I was able to give you some information that will make the show a little more fun to watch when you go back and watch it. Remember to head over to imayberry.info. All the information we talked about is there, and so you can refresh your memory and figure out, oh yeah, I forgot about this. And as you watch the episode, maybe it'll give you a little more something to watch for, something to see. And if you figure out something that we didn't talk about, email it to me at floyd@imayberry.com, or give me a call at 888-684-8415 and let me hear from you. I'd love to hear from you. It's always fun to hear what folks that listen or watch the show think. And I want to thank you again for being here. And until next time, we'll see you here on Two Chairs. Good night, everybody.